Hi, welcome to Rank Harvest. So one of the questions we get a lot here is, why is my site not being indexed by Google? Now, there can be thousands of reasons, anywhere from coding problems to duplicate content and everything in between. But we were asked this question by one of our clients this morning, and it turned out to be a good example of some steps you can run through to try to solve this problem. So this customer operates in the cryptocurrency space, and their website is basically a listing of all the cryptocurrencies and their pricing. Now, the first thing we notice about this website is the domain is old. The domain, it was registered in 2012, which makes it a fairly well-aged domain. But we couldn't find any evidence that there is a website live at this domain until our client purchased this and put up this website about 10 days ago. So even though the domain was registered quite a while back, the countdown clock to get out of the dreaded Google sandbox really starts when a website goes live. So again, even though this domain is pretty well aged, the website itself is very new, and there was never a website live at this domain prior. So it's not unusual for a site not to get all of its pages indexed, or maybe even any of the pages indexed, when it's brand new. But we found some other things as well. The cryptocurrency space is very crowded. It's very popular. And so are these websites like this one that list the prices of cryptocurrency. In fact, there's probably thousands of websites that look just like this. And that creates a little bit of a duplicate content issue, kind of in a weird way. So Google probably says, look, I already have 5,000 websites that look just like this. You're number 5,001. I'm not really that interested in you. Another problem is that many of these websites pull their information from the same one or handful of sources, and that can also create duplicate content. Not only with the pricing itself, but even if you were to click into one of these cryptocurrencies and get into a more detailed view, even the text that's displayed on those pages is being pulled from one source that's also being pulled from thousands of other websites on the web. So this entire website is virtually duplicate content. That's a problem. Google does not like to index duplicate content. Another problem we found is that when the client first asked this question, I couldn't get this website to load. I refreshed, I closed out my browser, tried again. It would not load. In fact, it wouldn't even give me an error message. It just kept thinking and thinking and thinking. I actually had to move on to something else, come back about 10 minutes later, and then the website would load for me. Obviously, this is a problem for Google. If your website will not load when Google comes to crawl it, first of all, it can't crawl a website it can't access. But equally as important, Google is not going to want to send traffic to a website that has such an egregious error as it not loading. It's a little bit flexible with some other errors, some HTML mistakes and things like that. But if there's periods of time during the day where your website just is not loading, that's a major problem when it comes to indexing. Another problem we found is there's no sitemap on this website, and it's not an absolute requirement that a website has a sitemap in order to rank well in Google, but it is kind of a best practices thing. And especially in the case of this website has 14,000 pages. So you start to get into concepts like crawl budget. With these giant websites, Google really wants to see a sitemap. So make sure you've got a sitemap.xml or whatever you want to name it. Make sure it is running dynamically, which means when you add a page to your site, there's software that adds that page to your sitemap automatically. And then, of course, go into Google Search Console, enter in the URL to your sitemap, and make sure that Google can successfully find your sitemap and there's no errors on it. It's another important factor when you're trying to troubleshoot why your site won't isn't getting indexed. Now, lastly, sometimes to break a website loose from being in non-index prison is through backlinks. And I don't necessarily mean going out and purchasing a backlink package from an SEO vendor. This can also just be you as a business owner going out and maybe being active on forums or just any place where you can get sort of your brand or your URL kind of out onto the internet. Technically, these are backlinks, but also it might create a trickle of traffic to your website, which will just kind of get you more on Google's radar. Google will start to look at things like how long visitors are staying on your pages. For example, if you just get a few visitors to come to your site and Google sees that these visitors spend a lot of time on your page and maybe click around to additional pages, this improves what's called your engagement metrics. And it's a way that Google judges how valuable visitors find your website. If it thinks visitors find your website valuable, it's more likely to continue on and index more of your pages. And then lastly, although this is a last resort, because this domain had already been purchased a while back, and we think there is no website live ever, we're not exactly sure. And there might be some baggage connected to this domain that may be holding it back. So as a last resort, after we can't come up with any other things to test, we may change domains and see if that helps the situation. But that's a bit dangerous. That can actually cause more problems. But if you've got nothing else to try, it's worth trying it. So just to go through these steps again, again, the site is very new. It could just be in sort of the sandbox still. And if you fast forward, a month, 2 months, something like that, Google might be indexing all of the 14,000 pages of the site without doing anything further. Duplicate content. This entire website is virtually duplicate content. That's a problem. There's thousands of websites with this exact same information, and Google just doesn't find that visitors are going to find that particularly compelling. Make sure there's no errors on your website. This website had a page load error. Depending on when you hit it during the day, it may load, it may not. And make sure that you've got a sitemap.xml. And also make sure you're looking in Google Search Console. I guess we didn't cover this one before. Google Search Console might tell exactly why this website isn't being indexed. There might just be some sort of crawl error that's maybe easy to fix. In this case, we didn't find any, but that should be one of the first places you check. And kind of on those same lines, you should also have Google Analytics installed. This gives some good insight into Google and lets Google help your site get ranked. So anyway, I hope you found this valuable. These are some of the steps we took with this website anyway to try to figure out why it's not getting indexed.